So there are the 7 steps, and here is a little introduction to me, Jimmy Winfield, and to my business partner and dear colleague, Greg Freed. Let me just tell you a little bit that we are here to, well, Greg is here as well as me, although I'll be doing the presentation. But and also our brilliant marketing coordinator, Nicole. So if you've got any questions at any point, then please just enter them into the chat, and Greg or Nicole will be very happy to answer them right away. If you notice, your display name is actually not your name, by the way. So perhaps it's name question mark or iPhone or something like that. It's very easy to change your name to the real name, to your real name. And Nicole, I think, has just posted instructions in the chat about how to do that. Anyway, as you look at these slides here, you can see from our descriptions that Greg and I are both educators. And as you can tell from our wrinkled faces, we have a lot of experience. So we met many years ago teaching at UCT, where we realized that other people need a top quality educational experience too. People who've finished university and also people who never went to university. And so we started a company called Skillfully to do just that. We're passionate about excellent teaching, and at Skillfully, we're on a mission to contribute to both the skills shortage and the unemployment crisis in South Africa. This is the top of the Skillfully homepage here. As you can see, we partner with many great financial services firms, and we offer a wide range of courses to them and to the general public. Courses that help build financial skills like Class of Business, CFA, Kaya, FRM. Perhaps you've heard of some of those. Maybe you've heard of courses in compliance like the POPIA Act and FICA. We also offer more general skills courses like Excel and Power BI and health and safety. And we also have courses in human skills like leadership and communication and management. So check out the website. You can see there it's Skillfully, LL. And you may well be interested to see what else we have that could help you in your career. We quite often have these kinds of free 1-hour taster sessions. So if you'd like more information about those, just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and click to join our newsletter. So one of the courses that we are absolutely proudest of is our RE5 exam prep course. Greg and I have been teaching a live version of the course for quite some time, but we have just launched a very exciting Anytime Online course. So I just want to tell you a little bit about that. I am going to get to helping you with how to pass RE5, I promise. One of the ways we think you can really help yourself pass RE5 is sign up for the course. So I do want to just tell you a little bit about it. I think you're going to be very interested. So it consists of 18 video lessons. You can watch them in your own time. You can speed them up. You can slow them down. You can watch them again. You can watch them at your own pace. It's 6.5 hours of video if you're watching it at the one-time speed. And it covers all of the legislation. Plus, it's got exam technique and strategy advice. It's not just the lessons, though. There's also a lot of questions. 90 or more questions, and we've lined them up with the different video lessons so that you complete them after each of the lessons that they are relevant to. Helps embed what you're learning as you work through the course. At the end of the course, you get to do 2 full mock exams, 50 questions each, which match the real exam questions. Obviously, you get the answers to both the practice questions and the mock exams. There's a chatbot. That's an AI-driven chatbot that will answer any questions you have about the RE5 material. And there is a full set of study notes that contains all of the slides we use on the course, additional information where there's a little extra that might possibly come up on the exam that we haven't covered in the 6.5 hours of lessons. We've got handy extra items at the end of the course, which you can look at, like time periods that you want to try to memorize, and a glossary so you can look up terms. Very helpful for kind of final exam prep. And the most amazing news about this is the discounts. We've actually just launched the course a month ago, and so we have still got it at our post-launch price. This is a ridiculously cheap price. The course is worth probably 2,500, 3,000, 3,500 rand. At some point, we are going to be putting our prices up to what the course is really worth. But right now, we want lots of people to take the course and to tell their friends and their colleagues about it. So we've got it at this crazy low price. So if you have 575 rand, I really, really do recommend that you sign up for our course. I'll just show you a little bit about it. Here's an example of a video. In the videos, what we like to do quite a lot is teach with timelines, because we find timelines are very good ways to get into people's head. Like I said, Greg and I have a lot of educational experience, so we look for ways to make the material memorable. You can see here I'm teaching about how an FSP might lose its license because the FSCA withdraws it, and there is a timeline that might come up on the exam. You need to understand, the process and the order in which things happen, and so that's what that video is doing. For example, in that particular spot, here are the practice questions I mentioned. So after every lesson, this is knowledge check 1. There's a bunch of questions here where people are having to answer those questions based on the video, the first video lesson. And here you can see me just running through a little demo of how I'm answering those questions. At the end of it, you get to see what your mark was. And if you're not so happy about your mark, you can have a look at the questions. What's the answer you gave? What's the correct answer? And so you can really learn through that process. Here at the mock exams that come at the end of the course, the end of the course involves some direction about how to travel the path ahead. You get a certificate of completion, but you also get this access to these mock exams. We've actually just recorded a lovely video with a past student of ours who we asked, were the mock exams kind of similar to the questions on the RE5, because the RE5 questions are secret. No one knows what they are. And so we always kind of try to test with our past students, were the exams close? And she said, she was sure that we had actually set the exam, because that's how close our mock exams are to the real deal. So that was really nice to hear that we are still hitting the mark on that. Here's the chatbot. Here I'm just showing you quickly. You probably can't see, it's quite small, but I'm asking, what does a representative do? And within seconds, here is this fantastic answer that the AI gives back. The AI has been trained on our material, so it is fully informed. It's not like just the answer you'd get from ChatGPT. This is a kind of a highly useful answer to any questions you might have. And then this is just a screenshot very quickly of what our study material looks like. So down the left-hand side here, you can see all of the different lessons. And then within a lesson here, this is lesson 8 on protecting clients. And you can see our slides. Each of these is slides. And there's some extra material down here. That's how this study material looks. There's a lot of it. I couldn't fit it all on one slide, but it gives you a sense here. Now I'm going to mention our course again at the end of the presentation, and we would love you to do the course, but I promise this isn't just going to be one big advert for it. Mostly what I want to do is give you helpful information about how to pass. At some point I will discuss 3 different approaches that you might wish to take to prepare for the exam. One of them is taking our course. And I'll try to show you why we honestly believe it really is very much in your interest to take the course. But ultimately, whatever approach you choose is obviously up to you, and we wish you the best, and we want to make sure this session is helpful no matter what you decide. So let's start with why you're here. In other words, why should someone be interested in passing the RE5 exam? And the answer really is twofold. Firstly, perhaps you are a supervised rep. And if you're a supervised rep, you must do it, right? Here, I told you we like timelines at Skillfully. Is one of the many ways in which we try to make things understandable and embed them in your memory. There is a point in time called DOFA, which is your date of first appointment. And as soon as you are appointed as a supervised rep, the clock starts. And you have got, in the next 6 years, you need to try to obtain the required experience. You need to do class of business training within 12 months, within 1 year. Within 6 years, you need to obtain a qualification. And then within 2 years, and this is the one I put in red here because it's the one that we're talking about today, you have to pass your RE5 exam. And so that is something supervised reps absolutely must do. If you don't pass your RE5 exam within 2 years, you actually can no longer provide financial services. So it's super important. But supervised reps are not the only people who do the RE5 exam. It's actually very helpful for people who are seeking work in the financial services sector. And the reason for that is just think about it. If a financial services provider is looking to employ somebody to become a supervised rep, and they have 10 candidates, and one of those candidates has already passed the RE5 exam, then that person has already got a foot in the door, because the employer knows that firstly, this person has the potential to pass the RE5 exam. They know that they can do it, so that means that they are capable. And secondly, they have in fact passed, which means the employer doesn't have to worry about financing their doing the exam, or worrying because they're not actually managing to get it within 2 years and losing the ability to employ the person beyond that point, and so on. So it really is a big advantage if you're looking for work. So at this point, actually, we try always to be as interactive as we can. Even our Anytime Online course, which is taught through recorded videos, if you do it, you'll find it is a very interactive experience. And so let's start being interactive today. And let me ask you a question. If you don't mind, please respond to this poll that I'm putting up in front of you. What about you? Are you a supervised rep, or are you looking to become one? I'm interested to know. You should be able to just push a button on your screen right now and tell us who you are. It's always interesting to know who's in the audience. So I see a few answers coming in. I'm going to wait for a few more to come in. So if you've been stepped away from the screen and you're just listening for now, just come back to the screen and tell us which of these you are. Are you a supervised rep, or are you looking to get a job? And there is an option of neither of the above. I see one person has said neither of the above. So that's interesting. Maybe you can, if you like, if you don't mind telling us, you could type in the chat what your story is. That would be interesting to know. But here are the results just for your interest. You can see that 56% of you, more than half of you, are supervised reps. Okay, so you know all about that timeline that you see here on my slide. Yeah, a third of you are still looking to get a job as a supervised rep. So get your foot in that door. Okay, very interesting. Thanks for participating. I'll give you a couple more polls as we go. And for now, let's move on with the slides. So here are the 7 steps that we believe you need to take in order to achieve that RE5 victory. Now, I'm not going to read through them now. I don't like reading through lots of information on slides, but we are going to work through them through the course of the next 45 minutes in this session. You can see there, the first is be familiar with the main characters. Okay, there are 10 main characters in the RE5 exam. One of them is the client. But there are a whole bunch of others, and I'm going to introduce them to you now. I want to achieve this first step with you now in the next 10 minutes. People do get these characters confused. It's important to have them separate in your head. And so another thing we've done at Skillfully to make these things understandable and memorable is we have used a proudly South African animal to represent each of these 10 main characters. And for the client, which is one of the mainest of the main characters, we use a honey badger. And part of the reason we've chosen a honey badger is because obviously a honey badger is on the lookout for a certain kind of thing, and that is honey, in the same way that the client of a financial services provider is on the lookout for a certain kind of thing, and that is a financial product. Okay, so a client is looking for a financial product, and a financial product is produced by what we call a product supplier. Okay, so we use a beehive, the producer of honey, to represent our product suppliers. Here are some examples of product suppliers. You will recognize a few of these, right? Because there's Old Mutual up at the top there, and there's Outsurance a little bit lower down. Maybe you don't recognize Orange Insurance or Peregrine Life. The truth is that product suppliers come in big and small sizes. These happen to be insurance companies, but that's just one kind of product supplier. And you can see that a couple of them come up more than once because they sell both life insurance and other kinds of non-life insurance policies. So that's just giving you a sense. If you want to imagine, it's often helpful. This is another thing we do with Skillfully, is we give you real world examples of things so that you really get a sense of what's going on and it becomes real for you, because working through that RE5 material on your own, it seems so abstract and kind of meaningless. You can't connect it to the real world. And so it's very hard to understand and remember. So if you need to visualize a product supplier, think of Old Mutual, right? Selling life insurance and other kinds of insurance. So this client here is after some kind of insurance product, and they can, if they want to, go straight to Old Mutual, right? They could go straight to Old Mutual and say, listen, I want some life insurance, please help me. But often they want help from somebody else, an intermediary. That's just basically a fancy term for a go-between. Someone who goes between two parties is an intermediary. And that intermediary is called a financial services provider. I'm sure you know they are generally referred to as FSPs. FSPs render financial services to clients for a particular set of financial products. They are effectively giving advice or offering some other kind of service as a go-between between the client and the product supplier. And there are lots of examples of FSPs. Here are just a few. You've all heard of Standard Bank. You've probably all heard of Alan Gray, right? A famous asset manager in South Africa. There are others that perhaps you haven't heard of. There's Ntembeko, which is quite a well-known administrator. Administrators are also one of the categories of FSPs. There you can see Aon Investment Management Limited. That's a hedge fund. If you haven't heard of them, don't worry. I hadn't either, but it's just giving you a little sense. If you do the course with us, we'll tell you a little bit more about Aon and what it means to be a hedge fund FSP. And then up at the top here, Nosipho Xaba is actually just a person. She's a person. I actually have never met Nosipho, but I found her on the FSCA's website, and I wanted to make an example out of her. She is an FSP herself. So FSPs might be as huge as Standard Bank or as small as just one individual person. Okay, and what are they doing? They're rendering financial services to their clients so that those clients can make the right sorts of decisions and get the right kinds of service in terms of the financial products they want from the product suppliers that produce them. Okay, now we have to look at this FSP. I don't know if you noticed before, but we have we've represented the FSP as a boma enclosing 4 animals, because there are 4 different main characters inside of FSPs. So the first of those is our hero, the meerkat, which we use to represent a representative. Okay, and a representative is either employed by an FSP or mandated by an FSP to render financial services on the FSP's behalf. So here's a little bit of a technical term, mandated. What does that mean? Well, it means that you are authorized by a written mandate to actually provide those services on the FSP's behalf, even though you're not employed by them. Okay, let's move on to another character here, and that is the lion, which we use to represent. Remember, the lion is the king of the jungles, at least that's what people say. So we use the lion to represent a key individual, right, which is basically the boss of an FSP. They manage or oversee the financial activities and the rendering of the financial services of the FSP. Then Another character is that cheetah. That cheetah we use to represent a supervisor. And that supervisor, those 56% of you in the audience today will know, is the person who is mentoring you and coaching you and observing you through the process of being a supervised rep, and making sure that you work to meet the competence requirements to become a fully fledged supervisor. To become a fully fledged rep yourself one day, maybe a supervisor of somebody else too. That's what we're hoping for all of you. And the last character in the FSP is the giraffe with a long neck who can look around and be able to see everything and make sure everything's going on correctly. And so that's why we've used the giraffe to represent the compliance officer, whose job it is to ensure that the FSP complies with financial regulation. Okay, so that is the FSP. Now, the FSP is actually governed by authorities that fly over them above these characters on the ground. And so we've used birds to represent those authorities. There are three of them. There is the ombud, whom we've represented as a wise owl because they have to independently handle complaints from the FSP's clients. There's the FIC, the Financial Intelligence Center, which combats money laundering activities and the financing of terrorist activities. And what that means for an FSP is that the FSP has to send a lot of reports to the FIC, and it has to keep a lot of records on hand in case the FIC requires them. And because of all of this record keeping and report writing, it sounds like secretarial work. And so we used a secretary bird to represent the FIC, which is making the FSP do all of the secretarial work. And last and most importantly, the authority we really want you to know about is the FSCA, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, which we've represented as a powerful and sharp-eyed fish eagle flying above the world of financial services and regulating the conduct of pretty much all of those characters on the ground, making sure that the financial services sector is well run and that clients are served well, their interests are protected. So here is a single image just summing up these 10 characters that the RE exam likes to ask about. Now, that, I hope, has achieved step one. You're familiar with the main characters. It's gone pretty quickly, and so you might need to have a look at this again. We're recording this session, and so Nicole, in the next day or two, will send you a link to a recording. You can check it out if you like, and revisit this and try to get these 10 characters separated out in your mind exactly, because it's very easy on the exam to get confused between them, and then you'll answer the question wrongly if you're reading the word product supplier, but you're actually thinking FSP. Okay, let's move on to the second step, which is understanding what the exam tests, right? Obviously, you can't hope to pass an exam if you don't understand what it tests. So let's start with that. And we're going to stick with our picture of financial services there. I've moved it over to the left to point out that actually what governs this entire world of financial services is 18 pieces of legislation. Here they are. And these 18 pieces of legislation are what's on the RE5 exam. Now, some of them are very long, some of them are very short. Some are, everything is examinable on the RE exam, and in others, only parts of them are examinable on the RE exam. One of the most important is that one at the very top, the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Services Act, what we call FAIS. And FAIS is super important for this reason here. Watch what I'm drawing here. This is the section of the world of financial services that FAIS governs. You can see it's almost everybody, right? Only the Financial Intelligence Center is not mentioned in FAIS. All of the other characters are. So it lays out all sorts of things about these different characters and how they need to behave. For example, the kinds of services and financial products that are offered, how an FSP gets licensed, how it maintains its license, how that license might be suspended or withdrawn, various duties of the FSPs, especially when they're dealing with their clients, how the FSP goes about debarment, which is when you effectively say a representative can be a representative no more, how the compliance officer does their job, how the ombud needs to exercise its authority, and so on. Like I said, there are 18 of these pieces of legislation, and the key thing to understand here is that they are the RE5 exam. The RE5 exam is no more and no less than a test of your knowledge of these 18 pieces of legislation. Now, the next thing I'd like you to understand is about the tasks and the qualifying criteria that the examiners have set up. But before we get there, let's do another poll because, like I said, we like to be interactive here. So, just going to set that up here. Yeah, okay. Let's see how many of you are with me. Do you feel familiar with the main characters in financial services? And do you understand that the RE5 exam tests the legislation? Just give you a few moments to respond. Don't worry, by the way, you already saw the previous poll. You're anonymous, so we're not going to expose you to everybody else on the call if you're saying, no way, you lost me on slide one. But nobody did. I'm very pleased to see. I'll quickly show you the results there for your interest. A third of you are feeling confident. I've got it. I understand this stuff. I bet that third is a lot of the supervised reps in the crowd today because they will already know some of this background, and so it would have been a little bit easier for them to keep pace with my quick description. And I see 2/3 of you have kind of got it. You just need to watch the recording to be sure, or maybe just join our course. Right? You don't have to watch the recording because we cover all of this in a lot of detail in the course, of course. So let me get back to the next project we have, which is step 3, understanding these tasks and qualifying criteria that are laid out by the examiners. Right? So maybe something I should explain here is that we do not set the RE5 exam. We at Skillfully are trying to help people pass that exam, but the exam is set by an organization called Moonstone, which has its own way of setting that exam. The examiners are smart people who know the RE5 legislation really well, and they have broken up the syllabus into these tasks and qualifying criteria. And so I want to just help you understand what that looks like. So you already know that there are 18 acts and regulations, or in some cases, not all of them, just selected sections of them that you need to know. What the examiners have done is they have arranged these into 8 tasks, right? That's the word they use, task. And then within each task, they have set these QCs, qualifying criteria, right? Which are basically learning objectives you might have to understand these 8 tasks better. And then each qualifying criteria references a bunch of legislation, right? A bunch of that 18 acts and regulation are referred to in the qualifying criteria. Now, that's not enough to really understand. We like to make sure that people understand it skillfully. So let me dig down a little bit more. Let me show you these 8 tasks. I'm going to do it quickly. You're not going to have the time to read every word on the slide here, but it will give you a sense. These are the 8 tasks. You can look them up and Google them. There's nothing secret here. Here they are. What we've done is we've counted up the number of qualifying criteria in each of them. You can see, for example, that task 7 about complaints, it only has 1 qualifying criterion, whereas task 4, well, that has 14 qualifying criteria. Now, we've also listed here in the last column the number of references to legislation. So you can see here, it's unsurprising that the one that has this monstrous number of references to legislation is that task 4 with the 14 qualifying criteria. And the one with the smallest is the one with only one qualifying criterion. And so that just gives you a sense of how much of the legislation is actually examinable. Let's just dig down here into task 1, just to give you a little bit more of a kind of a detailed understanding here about what's going on. You can see there are 4 qualifying criteria with 21 legislation references. Here we've digged down and we've shown you, here are the 4 qualifying criteria. Don't feel like you have to read them all right now, that they're just kind of giving you an idea of how this works. And within each of the qualifying criteria here, we have listed off the legislation references. So let's just look at task 4 here. You have to describe the role and function of a compliance officer. And the examiners believe that if you are going to be able to do that, then you need to know these 4 sections of the Phase Act, plus these 2 sections, parts of Section 18, plus 3 regulations from the phase regulations, and something from the General Code of Conduct as well. And so you might want to represent this as an illustration here. Here is the Phase Act. These are those 4 sections parts of Section 17, and then the 2 parts of Section 18. Here are the phase regulations. There's the 3 regulations you need to know. And here's the General Code of Conduct with that 1 section you need to know. All of those are necessary to be able to achieve qualifying criteria for describe the role and function of a compliance officer. And that's just one of 4 qualifying criteria that you need to be able to say, you know what, I've done task 1. And it gets worse. Check this out. I'm going to take this image and I'm just going to reduce it down to a little part there. There you can see those 3 pieces of legislation pointing at QC4 and the other 3. Well, let's add now. How would those other 3 work? Well, the other 3 also refer to the Phase Act, but they refer to others as well. And remember, there's 8 tasks, and each of them has a different number of qualifying criteria. And those qualifying criteria refer to, in total, 18 pieces of legislation appearing around your slide right now. And goodness, I'm going to do this horrible thing, and I'm going to add the arrows to show you how they all refer. It is a mess, right? It is a mess. It's very hard, actually, to try to look at the list of the tasks and the qualifying criteria and the legislation references and be able to make much sense of how they all fit together. So that is about the tasks and QCs. The last step that I feel I can really help you achieve today, before we talk about how to approach steps 5, 6, and 7, is this 4th step now. Reading the legislation, right? If the legislation is ultimately what you're getting tested on, then let's have a look at some legislation. Let's try to answer a basic question using the legislation and see how that goes. So let's take this question, for example. We've talked already about financial services providers. They provide financial services to clients. Financial services is a term that obviously must be defined, and it's important. So let's figure out what financial services means, and let's use the legislation to do it. Now, a great thing that we provide on our Skillfully website, also for free, by the way, you can access it as you like, whenever you like. You just go to Skillfully, which is skillfully.co.za, click on news, right? In fact, I'll just do it for you quickly now. If you click on news, then you get taken to a bunch of our latest news, and it's always not very far from the top. Here we go, examinable material for RE5. You can click on that and you can get access to the 18 pieces of legislation. We've made them available for free to anybody who wants to access them. Now, I don't mind telling you that the way to start answering the question of what is the definition of financial services is in the Phase Act. So let's go off to the Phase Act and let's have a good look at it. And so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier for those of you who are watching on a phone. I hope that this is now big enough for you to be able to read. There's in every piece of legislation, there's a contents page, and at Skillfully we've made those hyperlinked. So let's go to the definitions. And what's good here is we should be able to just scroll down and find financial services. There it is. Okay, this is going to be easy. We said that financial services we need a definition for, and there it is. Look, it's a short one. That's good. We can move on quickly. It means any service contemplated in paragraph A, B, or C of the definition of financial services provider, including any category of such services. Oh, okay, so that's not as straightforward as I was hoping, because it just basically redirects us to financial services provider. But the good news is that's just below, so we don't even have to scroll. Here it is. Financial services provider is any person other than a rep who, as a regular feature of the business of that person, furnishes advice and renders any intermediary service or renders an intermediary service. Huh. Okay, so it's these three things, A, B, and C, that financial service means. But, I mean, what is advice and what are intermediary services? This is getting a little bit more complicated, but I bet they've got a definition of these things. So let's go and have a look. Let's see, is advice here? Oh yeah, advice is here. Good. Except, my goodness, it's a long one, isn't it? Anything subject to subsection 3A, recommendation, guidance, proposal. Goodness. Okay, we don't really have time to get through all of this, do we? Just out of interest, let's have a look at intermediary services. Maybe at least that one's short. Oh, geez. No, it's not. It's even longer, I think. And I noticed the previous definition of advice referred to subsection 3A. Now, this one refers to subsection 3B. If we go and have a look at that, here we go. Here's 3A. It tells us what advice doesn't include. A whole long list of things. And now, look, B tells us what intermediary services don't include. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's actually even worse than that. I mean, I long ago gave up on trying to teach you the definition of financial service just in this session because it's just too long. And there's even this guidance note here. If I go back to our examinable material and I now show you this guidance note, this thing is full of extra information about what financial services means. And for example, here, look, in the case of furniture and motor car dealers, what financial services means, and so on. It's not a short thing, right? So what happened there? Let's just go back to our slides and try to catch up with what journey we've just been on. We started out asking ourselves, okay, what's the definition of financial services? And we said, okay, it's in the FAIRS Act, so let's look at that definition. We did that, but that basically just redirected us to the definition of an FSP. Then that took us to the definition of advice, which took us to the definition of intermediary services, and section 3A and B, which are telling us what isn't advice and what's not intermediary services. And then there's this guidance note as well. It is a long journey just to be able to answer one simple question. And there are many questions that you would have about the RE5 curriculum. So, yeah, at this point, why don't I pause and acknowledge that we have now reached step 4. We've tried reading the legislation, but I think it's time for another poll because I'm interested to know how you are feeling now about this. So let's put up a poll here for slide 36. Let's launch that one. Tell me, now that you know how the tasks and QCs are arranged and you've tried reading some legislation, how do you feel? It's nice to see some more answers coming in. Thanks, everybody. And let me, yeah, a couple more coming in, so I'll just give you a little bit longer to answer. Thanks for participating. I'm going to end it now, and you can have a look at the answers. Well, half of you are saying you're quite nervous, not sure how to proceed. And that is exactly how I would feel, to be honest. Or maybe if I were kind of just starting out on this road, I'd be somewhere between that answer and the last answer. I'm freaking terrified, right? Which I see 21% of you are feeling, I don't blame you. This stuff is complicated, and to be perfectly honest, the examination instructions don't make it any more straightforward. It's always the case when we ask this question of students that some people say, I'm chill, this will be easy. And man, I hope you're right. I really do. I hope that for you, that is the truth. But I must say, there are very few people who walk out of an RE5 exam saying, this was dead easy, unless they've taken an excellent course. Okay. Now let's move on. Let's ask ourselves, we're on the fourth step. We just need to climb 3 more steps. But unfortunately, that word just is a little bit misplaced, because these 3 steps, these last 3 steps, are the biggest. We haven't drawn them that way in our image, but the truth is that they are now giant steps that you need to climb to get to that RE5 Victory Cup. So here are 3 ways you might approach those last 3 steps. One we call read and regret, where you actually decide you are going to read through all of this legislation and you're going to try to make sense of it in terms of the tasks and the qualifying criteria. You can download the list of tasks and qualifying criteria. You can come and use our websites and have a look at the legislation. You can work through it on your own. But boy, you're probably going to end up feeling like that meerkat. Why? Why are you going to be exhausted with a book on your head and your head on the desk thinking, I can't take this anymore? Well, because the legislation is in disconnected sections, it's missing real-world context, it's long and it's detailed, and it's written in this foreign language called legalese, which nobody except lawyers understand. It's full of tricky exceptions, it's quickly outdated, it's hard to remember. So, yeah, it's not a successful strategy unless you are a lawyer and you have loads of time. Here's another approach, and that is what we call Google and gamble, right? And I think this is the approach that a lot of people take. They just decide, you know what, there's some free stuff on the internet. Let's just go and find it. Let's do a good Google search and find every piece of free stuff about RE5, and let's just kind of put it together, and hopefully all of the different jigsaw puzzle pieces are going to fit together and kind of basically make a picture for me that's good enough to pass the exam. It's a big gamble. And I'll tell you why. Because free stuff on the internet it's incomplete, right? We give away some free stuff too, but we are in the business of trying to sell courses to help people pass. We're not going to give away all of our stuff, and no other provider is either. And you're going to find, therefore, that there are just gaps. The gaps are too big. These puzzle pieces are not going to fit together. There's just going to be big gaps and you can't see the picture. Often, the stuff on the internet is irrelevant. We've looked at some questions that people put up there which actually have no bearing on the RE5 syllabus. And if you're not an RE5 provider like we are, you actually won't know that. So you don't know if you're wasting your time with irrelevant stuff. Often they're not closely aligned with the real exam questions. There are also, any free stuff you get is of variable quality, and it's usually low quality. It's often prepared by people who are not experts in the field and not expert educators, and it will probably end up making you feel more confused than actually confident about passing. And then, of course, the legislation changes all the time. At Skillfully, we stay on top of any changes to legislation, and we immediately update all of our material. But the stuff you're looking at on YouTube is probably outdated. So instead of those 2 approaches, we recommend that you take this approach. You prep and you pass. And if you take Skillfully's course, well, we make the legislation digestible and understandable and memorable. Our courses are complete. We waste no time, and we keep them up to date, as I've just mentioned. We use the latest, most engaging learning tools as well. And right now, our Anytime Online course is more than 75% off. So a lot of good reasons to take our course. The other thing I just want to point out is that people feel like they don't want to take a course because they want to save money. But let me just answer that question for you. Let's say you take one of these other approaches, read and regret, Google and gamble. Almost certainly, and I'm not just saying this because I want to sell you a course. We've spoken to people who have failed 5 times, right? Almost certainly you won't fail, you won't pass that first attempt, and instead you will have to attempt again. Now, even if you manage to pass the second time, you still are 2,600 Rand in the hole. If you instead use the prep and pass approach, well, you are going to have to pay that fee, right? You are going to have to pay the exam fee of 1,300 Rand, and you'll have to pay our 575 Rand fee, limited time special. And if you add those together, you get to 1,875 Rand. Now, that is a lot less than 2,600, and it's even less than 3,900 or 5,200 or whatever it might cost you to just keep writing this darn exam. So it's actually an investment that saves you money. It's the opposite of what most people think. It's actually cheaper to take a good course and pass first time. All right, now, I've told you that I think you should take our course, but I've also said that what I wanted to do today is to help you, whether you choose the prep and pass option or one of the other options, I do want to help you. So let me just show you what we do, which will help you either way, right? No matter what decision you make. How do you make the legislation digestible and understandable and memorable? How do we develop our exam technique? How should you revise and practice? Let me show you. Remember these images that I showed you before about how complicated all this legislation is? This is the stuff on debarment. It actually sits in 2 different tasks and 6 different qualifying criteria and 8 different pieces of legislation. We take that and we stick it in one lesson called debarment. And you start our lesson 15 knowing potentially nothing about debarment, and you end our lesson 15 knowing everything about debarment. And that's how it works for every one of our 17 lessons. So we've arranged the material into topics that are themselves digestible and understandable and memorable. We're trying to make the legislation meaningful. You've seen one way we do that. We use our images. Remember, the meerkat is a representative. So here, and the boma is the FSP. So here is the meerkat locked out of the FSP representing debarment, right? That kind of tells your brain on another level what debarment is and what it means. We also show real world stuff. As I've also mentioned to you, we like to show examples of things. Here is a debarment order, and this is actually showing a real person's letter basically saying you are no longer allowed to, for the next 10 years, provide financial services in any way, shape, or form. Now, when you see that, it really sticks in your head what debarment really means. And we go through the details. I'm not going to go into the details here, but these are slides from our course in which we take people through the debarment notification form that an FSP must fill in. And through going through the process of looking at these things, you actually start to really piece together what it really means in practice. And that just makes it so much easier to understand the material, so much easier to interpret the question, to remember the stuff you need to know in order to give the correct answer. And so that's what this kind of real world information is intended to achieve. And that's why we include a lot of it in our course. We also summarize the legislation. So here are our slides doing what I tried to do earlier by looking at the legislation with you. We tried to answer what is financial services. Well, here you go. These are the slides answering what are financial services, together with images to help you understand, and colors and symbols and whatnot that will really make that stuff meaningful for you. All right, and also translate it into English from legalese. So there you go. That's just a taste of it. Also, we try to establish recurring themes to shortcut a lot of the detail. Now, let me try to show you why this is helpful, okay? And again, if you don't take our course, see if you can do this for yourself. Try to identify recurring themes. Here's one. The legislation aims to protect clients That's almost always a theme sitting behind a lot of the legislation. But it doesn't require FSPs to protect clients beyond what's reasonable. Okay, so there is a point, the legislation is written for the real world, so there's a point in the real world where it becomes too onerous and unreasonable to do more to protect clients. Now, if you know this one theme, then you can answer this question. This question asks, in case you're on a device where you can't see all of the detail, when giving the client information, which of the following is a rep required to do? Okay, and the first option is prioritize the interests of the FSP. Now, you should immediately, if you know nothing except that recurring theme, you should immediately know A cannot be the right answer, because you can't protect the interests of clients if you're prioritizing the interests of the FSP. B says emphasize the maximum financial return that the client might earn from the relevant products. Now, again, if you're telling your clients about the huge amount of money that they might make if the stars all align and everything happens in just the right way, then you are not serving the client's interests. You're not protecting the client's interests, because what you really need to do, surely, is tell the client about the worst case scenario. How much money could they lose? And the kind of average expectation, like what's likely to happen. Those things are what you should be emphasizing, not the most that they might possibly stand to earn. Investing is not buying a lottery ticket. So those two things, even if all you know is recurring theme number one here, you know you can exclude them. You can eliminate them from the answers because they don't protect clients. If we drop down to a D, it says repeat the information in a weekly communication to serve as a regular confirmation whether or not the information has changed. Imagine if FSPs had to do that with every one of their clients, repeat all of their information whether or not it's changed every week. That's far too onerous. That's beyond what's reasonable. So just knowing recurring theme one will tell you you can eliminate D, which means that that's all you needed to know. You just needed to know this one fact, that legislation aims to protect clients, but not beyond what's reasonable. And then you can answer. You know the answer is C, even if you don't read it. You know the answer is C because it can't be one of the other answers. Okay, I hope that's a kind of demonstration of how these recurring themes can really help you shortcut to the right answer in the exam. And we will train you how to do that with a whole bunch of different recurring themes. We highlight the important exceptions because the law is full of exceptions. This is a slide on the fit and proper requirements. Have you ever seen a meerkat looking quite so fit? And was certainly fit. I don't know about proper. And you can see there that second bullet point is all about an exception to what we have taught generally. And we like to really highlight them because the examiners like to ask about those exceptions. So we do that. We therefore have taken the legislation from all of those kind of issues that we identified earlier when I was talking about the read and regret approach, and we have made it digestible and understandable and memorable, right? By doing this. And yeah, we'd love you to come and do it with us in our course. If you take another approach, here's my advice: try to achieve this on your own, as onerous and as difficult as that might be. That's the way to walk into the exam with confidence. I said you also need to develop your exam technique. So we give a whole bunch of practice questions, and we also advise people about their strategies. If you're not taking our course, then make sure you do practice answering questions wherever you can get hold of them. Although there is that problem I mentioned earlier, that often the questions that are online for free are actually kind of irrelevant or misaligned with the actual exam. And try to develop your own exam strategies, right? Try to figure out what works, right? We've got lots of advice that we'll give you if you come on our course. We've got lots of study material that you can revise. And you also want to try to make notes for yourself, or if you take our course, pay attention to certain kinds of summaries of the highly testable material. So that first slide up there is about the compliance officer's role. It summarizes it very neatly and with a diagram to help you understand the core of what a compliance officer does. I mentioned to you earlier, we like to use timelines. That's actually the timeline we use to teach how a supervised rep is going to get to the point of being a fully fledged rep by passing all of the things they need to. And then this is a nice example of a table we use that summarizes a whole bunch of material in one place, and that you can read through before the exam and hopefully be able to answer one or two questions that come up, maybe even three questions that come up based on this highly condensed way of representing and memorizing the information. We give mock exams, and I really would recommend that you use those mock exams. We always say to our students they should use them as a dress rehearsal. Leave them until the end of their studies when they feel like they know everything they could possibly know. Then go and do those mock exams and really build their confidence to be able to pass that exam with ease when it comes. And so here we go with a minute left. We are climbing up these stairs. We've actually got to the fourth step, right? Some of you said you'd like to have another look at the recording and just get it all straight in your head, but you actually have got to that fourth step. But there are these three big steps left. And what we would love is if you came and did it with us at Skillfully. Remember, you get all of these things with our Anytime Online exam prep course. Nicole is just reposting the links to that course in the chat. It's on this crazy special at the moment, 575 Rand. Please come and join us. We would love to help you. We, as I said at the top of this session, are passionate about helping people just like you with building your skills and moving on with your career. So we would really love you to give us that opportunity, and we will dedicate ourselves to helping you pass that exam if you do.